Morning folks, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. Back in another video from our series, Gear of the 20th Century Woodsman. And today we're going to talk about hand warmers, and particularly the Johnny warmer. Stay with me. Okay, so on the table here I've got several examples of hand warmers, and I'm sure you've seen these in your grandfather's dresser drawer or in your dad's hunting gear out in the garage, things like that. These were very popular among sportsmen, especially in the mid-20th century. Even today, Zippo still makes a brand new hand warmer just like this today. The most popular brand probably of its time was the Johnny warmer. And this one is the large size Johnny warmer that is supposed to last for 2 full days on one charge. These two here are smaller. This one a Japanese version, and this one an Abercrombie and Fitch version. So let's discuss a little bit how these hand warmers work, how to set them up, and how they operate. Now, one advantage to these hand warmers that you have if you are in a hunting camp or something like that is that they burn the same type fuel, this naphtha white gas fuel, that your Coleman stoves and lanterns burn. So you can use the same fuel in them. They recommend that you use lighter fluid in them, which is a premium naphtha basically, in my opinion. But the regular Coleman fuel works just fine in these things. So you can carry one fuel to power all these different devices. And a lot of them had a hole in them so that you could actually light your cigarette. There's one there, and there's also one large hole here, so that you could actually light your cigarette off of this hand warmer while it was in your pocket. And one this size was supposed to last a full day. One this size would last about 2 days. Now, what I found with these is filling them up is where you run into the pain. Because what you have to do with these work on evaporated fuel, very much like all of the Coleman lanterns, things like that. They work on the evaporation of fuel. So you've got, just like a cigarette lighter has, you have, inside here you have a wick. And that wick has to be filled with fuel. Getting fuel into that can be kind of a pain as well without a funnel. That's why I like using a small container like this, because you're going to get this stuff on things. So I generally will put it off to the side of something when I'm filling it up, tilt the canister itself toward my fill container or my filling container, and then pour gently inside to fill it up. And I won't fill this one all the way up. And once you had that done, you would then take your element and put it on top, and it's important that you don't mess with this element too much because you don't want to damage it. Now, this Johnny warmer came with a wick here. You want to shake off any excess from this thing, and you really preferably want to do that before you put the element back on. This one has a wick on the outside. With these warmers, what you would do once you fill them up is you would heat this element up from the outside and heat this canister up. Very similar to what you would do with like a Sphia stove or something like that. You're heating up the canister itself to pull fuel up. And so the fuel fumes would rise up into this catalyst, which would burn the fuel, and it would keep continuing to burn until it ran out of fuel. These square bottom ones are much easier to mess with and fill up and things like that than these Abercrombie and Fitch, Peacock, and Zippo brand ones are kind of skinny. They're more comfortable in your pocket, but they're definitely more difficult to mess with. Now, with this Johnny warmer, with this large size one that I have here, what they've done is they've put an external wick on this thing. And sometimes that wick will pull enough fuel that you can light it, and sometimes you have to kind of wet it a little bit to get it to pull fuel. But we'll try it and see what happens here. Okay, you can see that's holding a flame. So now instead of holding a lighter up next to the element itself to heat things up, I can just set this aside and let this start to heat everything up and heat this outer element up and start to pull that fuel up into the heating element. And so you'd let that sit just like this without putting the lid on it for a few minutes until it was lit. And sometimes you can't tell whether it's lit without feeling the heat coming off of it. Sometimes you won't see it burning bright red or anything until you've had it running for a long time. And once you get it lit, you would put the lid back on it and put it into the pouch that it comes with to protect you from being burned, because they do get quite hot once they get going. you don't want to handle them barehanded necessarily once they get going, because they will be hot. So they come with bags that you can put them in, and you can make your own bag. If you buy one somewhere off eBay or something and it doesn't have a bag, you can make the bag. It's not a big deal. The good thing about these is, from a standpoint of a guy who's collecting gear, like outdoor gear, where you're looking for something to collect or something to get into, these things are really cheap. I bought this one in the box with the original box, original instructions and everything, off of, I want to say Etsy or eBay, for about $22. You can buy these Abercrombie and Fitch ones for about the same price. These ones made in Japan, and the peacocks, you can get them for less than $15, especially if you just get one that doesn't have the pouch or anything. Like I bought this one, didn't have the pouch. I think I paid $10 for this one off Etsy or someplace like that. So they're cheap to get into collecting if you're into that, but they're also cheap to use as Woodsman's gear because they don't cost a lot of money to get them. And once this thing's been burning for a while, you should be able to feel things heating up a little bit. I would say that that's probably got it going. It's good and hot now. Put the lid on here. We'll just kind of hold it for a couple minutes and see if it's still holding heat. Oh yeah, definitely getting plenty warm now. So at that point, once you've got the thing going and everything's heating up, you would put it in the bag while it's still cool enough to hold on to. And you're gonna wanna move this thing around a little bit. You don't wanna obviously suffocate this thing of any oxygen or it's gonna go out. But you can close up the bag a little bit and put it down in your pocket, put it down in the front of your anorak, anything like that, and just kind of hold your hands against it, or even put it against your body to protect your body's core temperature. And Johnny Warmer actually made a belt that went around your waist so that one of these would be on each side of your kidneys to kind of keep you warm while you were hunting, or while you were sitting in a blind, a duck blind, a deer blind, something like that, or whether you were ice fishing. So they were a very, very popular item with sportsmen, and they're still really, I think, a viable item today, no question about that. So I wanted to introduce these warmers to you today. Again, they're fairly inexpensive, so they're fairly easy and affordable to get a hold of. They run on the same gas as either your cigarette lighter, if you carry a Zippo, or if you use Coleman products, the things that use white gas, or any kind of a Sphia stove or an Optimus or anything like that. These run on the same fuel. So they're very efficient as far as having one fuel that will run all of your devices. And I thought that they would be good for us to talk about in this series because, again, these things were a staple item. If you talk to your dad, you talk to your granddad, I guarantee you he's either had several of these or still has several of these sitting around in his kit somewhere. All right, folks, well, I'm Dave Canterbury of Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, and I appreciate you joining me today for another video in our Woodsman's Gear of the 20th Century series. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.